All right, it's time for the August wrap up. I read 8 things, which I'm impressed with because August was a little weird for me. And like, in addition to some things just being weird life-wise, and I got really sleep deprived the last week of August because of my pets being a little sick, and also I was hosting my cousin, and also I watched like a season and a half of Jane the Virgin in a weekend, and I went on a trip with friends. Like, honestly, I'm impressed. I read 8 things. And I'm impressed because I largely kept to my goal of like challenging myself about half the time. Like, it's not quite half. I think 3 books were challenge reads and 5 were for fun, but still, I enjoyed that I did that. And something I'm going to do for this video as I go through all 8 is not only will you have the normal star rating, I'll also just mention if it met my goal. Like, did I read it to be challenged, and like, do I think it was worth my time reading it? If I read it for fun, how fun was it? Because I think you can rate a book, like say 4 stars, but like also sometimes it's like, but it was like a 5-star entertainment read or something like that. So we'll try it like that. I don't know if that'll be interesting or fun. I haven't even prepared notes. I just realized, it's August 31st. I'm not going to finish another book today. I should film this while Ryan goes on a run. And here I am. I'm still a little sleep deprived. And the cats still keep throwing me for a loop. They're all okay. Let's start with the one I don't have a physical copy of, so I might forget, and that's Miror Dance. This one I read for Kosigan because I find them very fun. And I find them fun in a very holistic way. I really like the themes, I really like the characters, I really like the world building, I like the episodic nature, I like the writing style. All in all, it's a great package. And this one actually surprised me because it just had it had callback to characters I hadn't seen in a while. It had some It made me realize some themes the series has been doing as a whole. So like, I was just very rewarded in my reading experience, even though objectively this is one of the darker entries, and it really does challenge you as a reader with one of the point of views and their actions in the story. That said, I really enjoy that, like, I feel like, and I've said this already in a Friday Reads, but like, I feel like I'm in a season 2, 3, or 4 of a show. So we're really getting our sea legs. I've really gotten to get to know these characters and this world. And that's what I really wanted from like a long running series, is I just wanted to like be very invested and just have all this buy-in, and that's where I'm at. I'm really excited to read the next book, which is a favorite for people. Apparently Miles is 30, which is going to be a blast. So I don't really know what else to say about Mirror Dance because it's like nowhere near the start of the series. I would say that like it's sort of episodic like everything else, but like it really does lead right after Brother in Arms. And I really like that too. I like that, we still have contained story thoughts, but things have become more and more connected since Borders of Infinity. So that's been really rewarding for me. So this, I don't know what star rating I've given it. I usually save that till editing Angela. But in terms of like, did it meet my expectations? Did I have a great time? Yes. Yes, I did. The next one in my stack is Orbital. And man, was this book almost really fun for me. I read this as a challenge read because not only is it on the long list for the Booker, it was on the short list for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction. And for the first like 40 pages, I was in. I was like, this is very philosophical. It's very kind of stream of consciousness for these people who are, it's basically a day in their life on the space station. And I was really liking the little anecdotes and the little sentences. But I think that would have worked well in a 100-page package, but a 200-page packet, I got very bored, very fast, and I don't actually think I gained that much from it. It's a lot of platitudes, and it's okay. I think it was also trying to do too many themes at once. I think if it had honed into maybe 1 or 2 themes, that would have worked out, or if maybe we were only following one character instead of just getting little snippets of all these characters. I also don't feel like I had the buy-in that this is actually an international space station. Even though they all are philosophically thinking of different things and we give insights into different parts of their life, they did not feel like they were from different cultures. And I don't really know how to describe it other than like, I have like consumed media that is like written by someone who is bilingual or directed by someone who's bilingual, and you can feel like what happens culturally when you have a bunch of people whose first languages aren't the same work together. It's not that community doesn't happen. It's not that there are things that are similar, but there are also things that are different. And that's where like beauty can happen and people switch between languages. And anyways, I felt a lot of that wasn't there. And I thought that would have been really interesting. So I think I was left wanting more than I got. And I was just mostly bored. Now, the next one I have in my stack is the lit fic book that I liked the most for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction. Because there were like 3 short lit fic-y books. And this is It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over. This one was fun. And this one I comp to, if you like This Is How You Lose the Time War, I think you need to try this. I think there's a lot of overlap in what it's doing. Now, this one I read for a challenge, but I would also say that I found it relatively entertaining at the beginning. Near the end, I started to get more like, I don't know what's happening, but that's okay. Vibes. And then it was over because it's only 100 pages, so it's the right length for the vibes. The premise of this is really interesting, and it's going to be, a lot of the lit fic books, including Orbital, touch on themes of grief, but this one in particular is about grief and loss and mourning. And it's about a character who does not remember their past, does remember there was someone in their life that was important to them, but doesn't remember who that is, and is a zombie. And many people are zombies. You will never know how the zombie apocalypse came to be or anything like that. Honestly, if you need grounded anything, this is not a grounded book. But it reminded me a tiny bit of Warm Bodies, although that's more of like a rom-com and stuff like that. But in terms of like, this zombie has agency, it's lost, and you're just following it through 7 parts of like the book's broken into that as it's dealing with its grief and its sense of place and time. And it was just a really easy writing style to fall into. And because I think this focused on the stream of consciousness of one character and primarily one theme, it worked super well for me. Even though there were times where I was just like, does it even make sense that would happen? It's very fever dream, like suspend disbelief. Even in a world where there are zombies, like it does not follow hard rules. But I remember that being very similar to This Is How You Lose the Time War, because like in that one, if you have read it, they write letters to each other. And you never learn about the Time War or why they are time agents and what the goals are. That wasn't important. It was about their connection. And these letters would be found in weird things like trees or pebbles. And, it was very like, I don't know how that would work, but fine, vibes. And that's how this kind of is. Lots of vibes. So this one, I think, for me, was the most worth it of the works that challenged me in terms of their writing style and their project. This was very cool, and I was very surprised because I don't think I knew they were undead, but I thought ghost. I did not think zombie, and that was cool. The next one I read for fun, and it mostly met its goal, but oddly enough, I don't think I was ever really driven to pick it up. Like, I liked it while I was reading it, but it was hard to get me to pick it up, and it was hard to get me to continue, and this is The Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher. I believe this is one of the first novels she ever published under this pen name. I don't know if this was first or Byrony and Roses was first. It's one of the first ones. Like, if I look at my table of contents here, it only has her for children books listed on this side. So before this, Byrony and Roses had come out. The other stuff that had been out were only the short story collections, I believe. But regardless, I read this, and it's got all the trappings of a classic T. Kingfisher. I don't know if my head was just in a bad place because this was happening the week I was taking care of my cats and I was sleep deprived. But honestly, I have read books that have helped me when I've been sleep deprived or depressed or anxious, and it doesn't matter. Usually if I want something to be an escapist time, and if it is an escapist time, I'll be able to escape. That wasn't quite what happened here. That says, I still think it's a really good book. It just didn't meet what I wanted it to do at the time that I picked it up. So in this book, you're going to follow Rhea, and she has to marry this guy. And she finds out this guy's a sorcerer. And she's really nervous about it. She's 15, but she doesn't really have a choice. Like, peasants don't say no to lords. And so she ends up at his house, and as the title implies, she is not the first bride. There are many others. It's kind of one of those classic fairy tale type things where she has trials she needs to accomplish. She does have some allies. She's got a little plucky hedgehog companion. And, it was good. It had some great unsettling vibes. It had great atmosphere and imagery. I like Rhea. I will say, it's so interesting to me because I was thinking about Nettle and Bone while I was reading this, because that's also a book with trials and a quest and companions to accomplish a goal. And I like Nettle and Bone more. And so the main character, Nettle and Bone, is 30. And a lot of people don't like how she's written because they think she's written very young, which I disagree with. At least I think I relate a lot to that character, Mara. In Nettle and Bone, and I don't think the average person would meet me and think that I was a young adult. It's just sometimes your brain space is just different than I think how you outwardly present yourself. That said, reading this, it's 15-year-old, and I don't think people would think this felt like a young adult character. It was very clear that this is a character who, in this medieval era, had a lot of responsibilities and was, problem solving, very level-headed. Her internal monologue is pretty strong. So I think that could make or break the experience. And it was a short story. I just don't know why. This is kind of like the Raven and the Reindeer territory for me and T. Kingfisher, where it's like, I liked it. Same with like the Thorn Hedge. What's it called? Oh, where is it? Yeah, Thorn Hedge. It's like, I like it, but I don't love it. And that does kind of show, like, when she's doing just straight fairy tale retellings, I don't like it as much as when it has just that little bit of fantasy romance. This one does not. So if you were like, this one's a fantasy romance, it's not, which I kind of knew going in, but still, it's interesting as I've been reading, all of her bibliography, and so many of her things work for me. Figuring out what has been working best has been very interesting. Next one we'll talk about is Lost Places by Sarah Pinsker. Oh, this might be one of my favorite short story collections of the year. I don't even remember how many I've read so far this year. I mean, I have read Octavia Butler's, but I think for me, this one's stronger. Sarah Pinsker, just such a tight short story author. And I just cannot express enough how much we take that for granted in the SFF space. Making a long story short is not how you make a short story. You have to figure out, well, what is the tale I want to tell, and is it actually short? And it has different pacing, it has different momentum, and almost all of these I couldn't put down. There were like 2 that I didn't love that much, but like for the most part, I was enraptured by all of these. It has a good blend of just straight science fiction to unsettling horror, and I love how Sarah Pinsker does unsettling horror. It's so good. I reread the one that won the Nebula and Hugo, and it's just like one of the best short stories ever. That one in particular. So that's where Oaken Hearts Do Gather or something like that. It's basically a thread. So you're on a forum and there's this old folk song and everyone's always analyzing every verse and like footnoting everything, and there's a story within the footnotes, and it's so well done. So that one's really cool. I really like The Court Magician. That one's unsettling. I think I've read that one before too. I think the horror ones were my favorite, followed by the science fiction. But she's just so tight. Like if you're ever someone who's just like, you want to read a short story and it feels like you sat down, you were able to read it without being distracted, you were immersed, you were in, you were out, you were content, you gotta try this one out. This was really good. Next up, we've got Tidal Creatures. This, Shauna McGuire, 3rd book, and my favorite is Middle Game. I don't love Seasonal Fears, so I picked this one up, but it was meant to be entertaining, and it was. I mean, so here's the thing. I think I'm giving this and probably Seventh Bride the same score. I think. Who knows if you've been seeing this? Who knows what editing Angela has been doing down here. But I would say somehow Tidal Creatures was more engaging for me. I had more fun reading Tidal Creatures. I more wanted to pick it up. I more wanted to find stuff to do. Now, part of that could be I had the audiobook for this and I didn't have the audiobook for Seventh Bride. I also didn't have the ebook for Seventh Bride. When I am stuck to only physical form, that can be really hampering to me and the options I have for when I get to read something. Now, Tidal Creatures, it's an exposition dump. That's all it is. So if you don't like that, you should go away. It is fan service for those who like to be around Roger and Dodger. If you don't want to be there for that, I'd go away. It's not that great of a book, I don't think, but I had a fun time. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, what the purpose of it was, but I had fun reading it, and I will cautiously consume other entries in that world. So, yeah. And now my last challenge book was The Library of Broken Worlds, which I read at the very beginning of this month. It feels like another time, another place. This one was challenging. And I think I generally liked it. And I think it's going to pair very interesting with The Siege of Burning Grass once I get to that, because it's about conflict and hidden histories and also identity. It's a very interesting young adult book. It's very challenging. It's the opposite of Tidal Creatures. Minimal exposition. Best of luck figuring it out. It's such a sci fantasy. If you want something that is unlike anything you've read before, you should give it a shot. It has a nice lyrical writing style. I don't think the writing style is hard. I think the world building is unique, so that can be like a barrier, but I also don't think it's like the most complicated thing I've ever consumed. I do think for me, the writing style kind of prevented it from being like a perfectly well like driven machine for me. But that said, I loved some sections. It has a great homage to Spirited Away in it. It's also a book about storytelling because, we're in a library and things like that. It has this narrative framework of our main character talking to this god, and she keeps getting to live because she's telling him stories. So very, homage to Arabian Nights. At least that's how I took it. They actually don't mention Arabian Nights in the book. The world is so weird, but you kind of understand why it gets so weird. So if you're one of my people who likes Gideon the Ninth, likes Nine Fox Gambit, has read Karen Lord's sci-fi and have liked it, you should give it a shot. See if it works for you. You can try, a little sample. It's just very ambitious. And I think I like the ending. There's just one thing I didn't really like about the character development and how much it tied to a moment where there was a moment of trauma in our main character's life at the beginning of the story and how that played into the climax. I don't know how I really feel about it, but that said, I'm really glad I read this. I did not know how I would feel about this when I was on the Ursula K. Le Guin list, and it's not my favorite book by any means. Like, I probably don't even have, like, a super high rating for it, but I'm really glad I read it because it was so unique. It was so interesting, and I can see a world where this is, like, a tiny bit tighter, and it could have really, like, I think it's just a bit long. If I look at the copy I have here, it's pretty tiny font, and it's over 400 pages. I think you probably could get this down to 300 and have like a better momentum-driven story. Because I do think there are times where it lulls for a little too long for me. And the last book we'll talk about is The Emperor and the Endless Palace, which I read for entertainment, finished because it's good, but it wasn't very entertaining for me, alas. Mainly because I don't think I truly understood how toxic the book was going to be. Once I was like kind of on board for the project, I think it's like a fascinating work of art. Like I think it accomplishes its goals extremely well. Was I wanting to read it for those reasons? I don't know. Like I think when I picked it up, I wanted to be swept away in a tragic love story. And this wasn't the type of tragic love story I could be swept away in because it was just too toxic. These people should have just not been together. And I think I mentioned it on Friday Reads, but I'll reiterate it here. It has erotic scenes. Everyone talks about how it has erotic scenes, but it also has erotic, like, sexual assault scenes. And that's weird. Like, I've read those scenes before, and I've read erotic scenes before, but I've never read them together, and it was a very odd experience. I mean, maybe the closest was when I read Docile, but even then, I don't feel like it was as bad for me as it was reading this. And it's just that, it's not even just that it happens once, it happens multiple times where there is non-consensual moments and you get to graphically be involved with them. But I think there is a point to that. I was just like, it was very uncomfortable for me. And I'm pretty sure that's the point. I'm fairly certain that was intentional. It's just that I wasn't necessarily mentally prepared for that when I was reading the book. I was still like, wait, isn't this supposed to be like they keep finding each other through time and space love story? Yes, like, it's kind of a time. I really do like the ending for one of the characters and not the other. It has one of the best twists that I didn't see coming in a very long time. One of my friends didn't see the twist coming. One of my friends did. So whether the twist will happen for you or not is who knows. But that was fascinating for me. And I do like how when you're starting this book, I think it's very engaging and intriguing how you're in 3 different times. And you're like, when are these timelines going to intersect? What is my glue here? And I think that's really interesting. I think my favorite storyline was the modern day. But I think part of that has to do with the choices the author made in the character arcs in the story. And like, I think that's also part of it is like, maybe I have one gripe in terms of, I think one of our characters gets done worse than the other in a way that I don't know is like super fair, but maybe that's the point, you know? Again, so a lot of this is like, I'm not happy because like I want a different story, but I don't get to decide what an author puts together. So for the story as it's put together, it's like well crafted. I just, it's not something I maybe would have picked up. And it was short, so there's that. Okay, so that's the August wrap-up. Those are all the things I read, some rambly thoughts on them, and I'm looking forward to September. Lots of fun rereads in September, so that should be a good time. What were your highlights of August? Any lowlights? Did you watch a season and a half of TV like me? If you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, what was my favorite read of the month? Wow, maybe that's why this month feels weird. I don't think I had like a 5-star or anything. I think my closest, did I move the camera? Nah, it's fine, is Lost Places. Wow, isn't that weird? So I guess an oak related thing. So acorn, tree, leaf. There you go. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.